All right, you're tuned in to MMA Canada and very excited to be talking to an individual fighting on the UFC's next card in Canada, which goes down in Edmonton on November 2nd. And we've got a very intriguing bantamweight fight set to go down as Cody Gibson takes on Chad Anheliger, and great having Chad as part of the MMA Canada experience here today. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome, man. Excited to be talking to you. It means fight is getting closer.
Yeah, and some big news, it seems like, man. I saw you had re-signed for another 4 fights with the UFC, so big congrats on that, man.
Thank you. That's always been a big goal of mine. If you look back at all my previous interviews, even when I first got signed after the Contender Series, getting re-signed was really important. It's really a validation that, the UFC has got a good look at me. They know what they're getting, and they decided they want more. So it's real big for me, and I'm looking forward to these fights. I'm going to definitely do my part and keep them exciting.
Yeah, your track record very much speaks to that, and there probably would have to be some, I don't know, maybe even like it kind of is in line with what you're talking about there, like a certain like validation component almost, or maybe even like a bit of relief too, like just in the sense of like a lot of the articles I was seeing related to your last fight, like it seemed like you were using the kind of language of like feeling like your back was against the wall and like it was a very pivotal fight in a certain sense, and it seems like everything's kind of really fallen into place perfectly. So is it kind of that same feeling you're talking about there, just even in that sense?
Yeah, I mean that fight was it was really it really kind of encompasses everything I was feeling is that, I've done a lot of hard work to get these opportunities, but I still need to capitalize on the opportunities. And my first 4 fights of my career, they were okay, some up, some down. I got to show off a bit of who I am and what I'm about and what I bring to the table, but I wanted some better results. And this fight, I think, was really showing where I'm at right now. And the Chad that's had 4 or 5 fights in the UFC is a lot different than the guy that only had one or two. And that was kind of my chance to show them, like, I'm just getting started and give me more opportunities and I will make the most of them. And I think I showed them that. And then sure enough, now they come back with a bunch of new opportunities for me. So I'm looking to do it again.
Yeah, and much to talk about with this upcoming fight, but I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't, touch on that last performance even more because it was really a story of the statistics in a lot of ways. Like it looked like a fight you were really in control of from start to finish, albeit in a situation where I saw you describing it as like 20 pro fights later and, having a significant enough injury, at least relative to the injuries you've had in your fights, and you'd hurt your hand from that beating you put on Charalampos, Grigoriou, and everything. But I guess just in terms of like that component I was discussing, like the statistics and just how comprehensive of a performance it was it as well-rounded and just, I guess, desirable of a performance you felt? Like, was it, I guess, something that couldn't have gone any better in a certain regard? I mean, maybe the hand component, I suppose, but just in terms of like the actual like story that unfurled in the fight, I suppose.
Yeah, I got a chance to show off what I'm all about, really. I really got to put my skills on display. You don't always get those type of scenarios on your fights. Things happen, injuries happen, guys have different game plans, style. There's all kinds of things that might happen to make a fight not as, clean as a performance as you want. But for me, that last fight really worked out for me. I was able to shut down the wrestling, which kept it on the feet where I was more comfortable and allowed me to really show off my skills there. So that fight was picture perfect for me because he was dangerous and had a lot of power, and I showed that, I'm more dangerous and I've got more skills. And yeah, I think I caught a lot of people kind of off guard that were watching. I don't think they expected to see that kind of level out of me. And even that is just the tip. I got lots more coming. So
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like you've really, I guess, shown yourself in a lot of these moments. Like, not like you were on a bad streak per se, but I guess I just even remember earlier in your career where it seemed like finding that certain consistency was a little difficult. And then you'd had an arc with Champions Creed where, like, you really, I guess, like, earned your trust, for lack of a better way to phrase it. Like, it feels like you really, like, proved yourself even within that space. And then there was a demonstrable turnaround thereafter where you've collected some big belts in Canada in multiple divisions. So yeah, it feels like you really, I guess, can kind of learn from those moments, like even just those times where it's like, okay, I need to kind of like make some adjustments here or alter my methodology. Like it really seems like you come out of it at like a completely different level.
Yeah, the more opportunities I get where I'm pushed, where I have to dig deep, whether it's, career wise or in a fight or whatever the feeling is of, things have going bad and I really got to dig down deep. I've been fortunate that every time I dig down deep, I come up with something. A lot of other people, sometimes they dig down deep and they find out there's nothing down there. But I haven't found my bottom yet. So I actually get motivation, more pressure. The more my back's against the wall, the more I know that I will come through because I've done it consistently. It's something I can count on, that I will be there to, do what I got to do always.
Yeah, and it seems like you really, pass that along to, the people at Champions Creed who are on their own individual journeys, like in your coaching kind of capacity. Like I'd seen a clip a little bit ago where you were talking about, confidence and consistency, how those are like the primary things and not even just mixed martial arts, but in life overall. So that must be rewarding to pass on your knowledge. And I mean, you're doing it at, such a high level and you're really showing that sort of ethos of like, if there's, like you said, that certain moment where it's like you need to like dig deep within yourself. It's like, there's something at the bottom there for you to tap into. And I'm sure that is a great thing to, impart to other people because you really, demonstrably showcase that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's really easy for me to communicate those things to our students and at the gym because I'm not a especially gifted athlete. I never have been. But I work hard and I build my confidence and I do the right things the right way consistently and I get the results I want. So it's very easy for me to point to my fight career as kind of this metaphor for life for a lot of people that are here training because there's nothing fancy about it. And a lot of people are looking for like, hey, what's that secret answer? What makes everything work? And it's like, it's not a secret answer. It's just the right things done consistently over time, and you'll get what you want. So I can use it as a good tool for, teaching my students and as they're starting their journeys, giving them some direction.
Yeah, for sure, man. And it's just so cool that, this fight is, based in Western Canada. Like I'm sure fighting anywhere in Canada would have been cool for you, but just with Champions Creed being kind of out of that Calgary area, getting to, fight in Edmonton here. Like when did the bout offer initially kind of get on your radar? I imagine it was a fun phone call to be receiving as far as like the location and stuff like that, but what was the timeline like for all of that?
Yeah, we were actually a little nervous because I'd heard through the grapevine that it was coming to Edmonton. So I messaged my manager and I said, "Hey, what's going on with this? I'd like to be part of it." The injury timing had worked out really well. I was just getting back to training from the last fight, so everything was on track. But I didn't have a new contract yet, so I was kind of like, and we knew there was a potential that I wasn't going to get re-signed. Now I was pretty confident we would. My manager was as well, but there was still a lot of unknowns floating around. And was feeling a bit of anxiety. I found myself, checking social media every, hour to see what's the latest update on UFC Edmonton, what's going on. And then, yeah, sure enough, I got the call from my manager, and it was the fight offer and the contract offer at the same time. And it was a great phone call. It was the best one I've had in my professional career because the validation of getting four more fights is like, it's hard to even put it into words because the UFC is so hard to get to. Everybody can tell you that, but what people don't tell you enough is that when you get there, you are going to be exposed for the good and the bad and everything in between. So when you're out there, you're vulnerable. They see everything they need to know about you in that time. And then if the UFC and the fans and the brass they want more of you, that's a really it's a really positive sign, a good confidence boost for me. Plus, I love the fight matchup. Plus, fighting in Edmonton, a lot of my friends, family, students will get the chance to see me fight live for the first time. For a lot of them, I haven't fought in Alberta in a really long time. And, a little part of me, I might be making this up a bit, but a little part of me feels like I had a hand in bringing it back. So everybody's getting a chance to go watch a live UFC event here in Western Canada, right in Alberta. So far, I'm the only Albertan on the card, so I like to feel like I had a little hand in that too.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting because there is a Canadian presence for sure, but I feel like a lot of it is like Ontario and Quebec kind of centric, which like, I mean, having Canadians on the card in general is good, but it's good to have that localized presence that you're bringing to the table they're putting on for Airdrie and Calgary and surrounding area, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to have a loud pop, and there's gonna be lots of people there to support me. and I'm going to make sure that they, are not embarrassed to be wearing, my gear or Anheliger name across their back. They're going to leave, really satisfied with what I'm bringing to the table.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked about the excitement with like the specific matchup as well, and I can definitely understand why that would be the case. I mean, he recently got back into the win column with that victory over Brian Kelleher and whatnot, which is an impressive win in and of itself, but just one of those resumes where there's just so many standout names on it. Like he was a guy who was in there with like Brad Katona and Ray Borg and John Dodson. I mean, you could really keep rattling them off. Manny Gamburian, Johnny Bedford, Aljamain Sterling, etc. So I would think this would be a great opponent to have at this juncture in your career. Like, is that a sentiment you share as well? Like, I feel like this is an opponent that has a certain level of cachet and kind of like big name experience and whatnot.
Yeah, that's what the new contract is bringing with it. I think is a little bit bigger opportunities, a little bit more of a well-known opponent. But also for me, the writing's really on the wall with the fight offers I get from the UFC. I know what they want from me. It's very clear. They want a very brawlish, drag them out, back and forth, get the crowd going type of fight. I can tell that by the type of opponents they're putting in front of me. Cody is tough. He fights hard from the start to the finish. He's down for a bloody war. I know it. I know I am. So for me, just even getting that name and getting that match, it's like, okay, I know what they're expecting from me, and I'll deliver on my side of it. Like they're going to keep giving me good opportunities and good names, but I know where the expectation is too. Like, hey, we expect you to go out there and put on a great fight to get the crowd going. I know my job, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you've generated such massive finishes in your career, like that Jesse Strader knockout in the third round. I feel like is one that often gets cited. So I feel like that's even probably what you're talking about there. Like maybe just finishes like that have created a certain level of reputation, and then even as part of that expectation from the brass and whatnot. But I feel like that's the kind of fight you like to have in general anyway. So I guess it all kind of works out like you're, I guess, naturally just delivering these kind of performances, and then it sort of becomes the expectation, and you're making the inferences from that in the matchmaking too. So yeah, it could be some performance of the night ingredients there too. Just you were talking about the pop element as well. Like I feel like if you get your desired outcome here, we're maybe getting that post-fight bonus sort of thing rolling.
I'm due. I'm due for a bonus. I've done a lot of things in the UFC so far, but that one has eluded me. So I'm ready for a bonus type of fight. And yeah, I want to win. I want to win so bad. Winning is super important to me. But at this point in my career, I've shifted my focus to performances. I want to put on a great performance. If I do that, usually I will win. But for me, it's like I don't go out there thinking like before I made the UFC, there was so much pressure on my win streak and I had to keep winning. I had to have a good record to get signed to the UFC, and winning was what was most important. And once I made it, winning is still important. I didn't want to get to the UFC and just burn out. I got some wins. I've had some ups and downs. Now I have my new contract, and it really opens me up to be a bit more free with my performance. I just want to go out there and put on the best fight. When everybody leaves that arena in Edmonton, I want them talking about my fight. With any luck, they're talking about my victory, but no matter what, they're going to be talking about my fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't get some of your thoughts on just the general state of 135 pounds, being that you're a UFC bantamweight. Like, what are your thoughts on the relatively recent, performance from Merab Dvalishvili cementing himself as the champion? And I guess just the overall fight he had against Sean O'Malley there on the Nochi card.
Yeah, the division stacked. There's lots of great athletes in the division. I feel like that's one of the things that in my career I've seen change more and more is the level of athlete that is now competing is just so much higher than it used to be. People aren't playing other sports; they're getting into fighting early. So I see that in the division. I see a lot of athletic guys, but I also still see the fighters in the division that are there to fight and with the skill level and the grit. So, that fight with O'Malley and Merab was a great fight. I love style versus style fights because you have to really think your way through them a lot. So, those guys are great. Merab is an example of a guy that's like at such a high level athletically, and he pushes that pace that it is hard to overcome that with skills and fighting IQ and things like that. But that's what makes it exciting is there's always this, the fighters versus the athletes. the styles versus the styles, and then you get a mixed match of everything in between. So, I mean, my division, I'm sure it goes for every division, but I really feel like it's really spread out. Um, we've got we've got guys. I mean, when I fought Jose's guys 6 feet tall in there. There's guys 5'4" in there. There's freakishly strong people. There's really, skinny and slender guys. There is jiu-jitsu world champions. There's striking experts. It's just I really feel like the division is really spread out and diverse. And that's what makes it for so many exciting matchups. So yeah, every time I see a 135 matchup, there's always something I'm watching out of it. Like, oh, I wonder how his whatever, A, B, C, or D, size or strength or skill matches up versus his A, B, C, D. And it's what keeps fighting exciting for me.
Yeah, and I feel like that also resonates through the people that are watching the fights. I mean, I feel like for years now, people have talked about bantamweight as being, like, at the very least, one of the marquee divisions, if not outright for a lot of people, the most exciting and deep division to follow. So, I mean, that can only benefit you as well. Like, I get what you mean on the individual competitor level, where all these different body types and, I guess, stylistic attributes, it keeps it really fresh for you on a level of preparation and game planning. But it really seems like there is that focus on it and the general, I guess, just support and intrigue from the fans for UFC's bantamweight and really bantamweight overall in the sport.
Yeah, the guys at the top are helping sell our division. They're putting on great fights. We have a ton of skill level, and like I said, the athlete level is what is really high in our division. I think it is in all divisions, obviously, but I really feel like we've got some really special athletes in there right now, which is just adding to the flavor of the division. And yeah, people are always watching and talking about the bantamweight fights. I wish I knew or could find access to statistics, but I would venture the 135s have a lot of bonuses when it comes to fight night.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, definitely a lot of delivering and exciting action as we're talking about. And I guess within that deep division, like, what do you think could happen next as far as like the next title contender? Because I feel like there's some talk about maybe O'Malley getting a rematch and kind of going that route, but then there's an obvious option in Umar Nurmagomedov. Like, who do you see being the next individual to challenge for the UFC bantamweight title, do you think?
Yeah, it's always tough. It's exciting to see new challengers. But there's a really good argument to be made that O'Malley deserves a second shot at it. It was a fairly close fight. There was a lot of hype behind it for not that definitive. And I know Marab won, and you could call it fairly definitive, but I still think that those guys have more to offer. And I think that from a fight fan perspective, really watching the adjustments, the fight IQ changes in that fight would be very interesting. What does Sean do different? What does Marab do the same? I think there's like a lot of cool storylines there, but there's just a list of killers behind it. Like when you look at the whole division, anybody could be fighting for that title and win it on any given night. So it's very easy to get excited about any matchup that comes through that starts getting matched up. I mean, um, Jose's still out there, Aldo. Like it's crazy to think when you start looking through the names of what's still there and some of the dangerous young guys that are in the division. Like it is very difficult. Anybody could win at any time. So every matchup is easy to get excited about. But me personally, I'd love to see how Marab and O'Malley played out again.
Yeah, so many interesting options and I guess kind of in a different context, but still similar vibe of, additional options being there. I mean, this new amendment to the unified rules, for lack of a better way to phrase it, like that's kind of, I guess, an interesting component, or at the very least, a topic of discussion for some people with this card, just with like 12 to 6 elbows being allowed now, and there being certain differences to what constitutes a grounded opponent and stuff like that. And this UFC Edmonton card is UFC's first event with the newly amended rules. Like I've been talking to a few fighters lately, specifically, I guess, even about the 12 to 6 elbow component, but just the idea of the unified rules being slightly different. Like I feel like a lot of the fighters I've spoken to kind of look at it like, well, I don't know how many opportunities you'll really even get to like land good solid 12 to 6 elbows where they would be consequential sort of strikes and whatnot. Like, what are your thoughts on all of that? Like, is there a certain, I guess, amendment to your preparations with this new, I guess, permutation of the unified rules? Like, do you think these, I guess, changes to the rules will ultimately make a great deal of difference to your game or even a lot of the other fights?
I think it's fair to say that it will take time for it to really start to trickle into the fights. The rules may change for that fight night, but training camps and everything, it just takes lots of time to build stuff into your game if it's different than what we've been doing for, myself anyway, 15 plus years. I'm not just also going to completely add a new technique. It's nice to be a little freer in there and not have to think as much. The only thing that we're paying attention to for my camp is just knowing when a downed opponent is and when they aren't. Things are a little bit different for that. I think that's the only thing that has a bit of effect. Um, so there's some opportunities there, and you also want to make sure you're fully aware of if you're down or if you're not. So we made sure that I'm thinking that through properly. And the 12 to 6 elbow, I would agree with almost everybody. It's like, sure, if there's an opportunity to slam one in there, great. But we've been doing that already. They talked about the slight angle change makes it not 12 to 6. That was a way of kind of getting around that rule for years. So it's now that it's not a rule, it actually hasn't changed that much. So I don't think there's going to be a big, massive difference for the elbows. We're already using them where they're effective against the cage, etc. They just gave us that 1 degree to play with. So I don't think there's a big change there, but people need to be aware of when you're a down opponent or not for sure. And hey, it's an opportunity. First card, new rules, make some history. Be the first person, get a 12 to 6 KO or get
Yeah.
a KO and somebody has both hands on the ground or whatever. So I'm always looking for opportunities.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, I don't want to say anticlimactic necessarily, but I mean, I guess just with the 12 to 6 elbow thing, like it does seem like even talking to a lot of the fighters I've spoken to, like very, similar sentiments. And like you said, I mean, always trying to like work in the elbows in a legal way at the time anyway. So it was almost like a formality based kind of thing. But like you said, it's almost like the idea of what constitutes a grounded opponent now going forward is probably the most interesting facet of the recent change in the rules.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the one to really pay attention to. And most people that are training, you're always training in kind of a worst case scenario anyway. So you'll never catch me or any of our guys in Champions Creed sparring playing the grounded opponent card. Like we are trying to get up or we're trying to wrestle or we're looking like it's just not going to change our training very much. That we're never trying to be in that position. So the fact that the position has changed a little bit of what constitutes what, it doesn't really change what we're trying to do. We're if we're trying to not be down, we're trying to be up. We're not ever trying to play the in-between game anyway. So it doesn't change a lot, but in the fight, it'll be something to be aware of for sure. And, we got coaches that this will be one of the clear moments where the coaches and the info we get from our corner can be really helpful, reminders for being down or not being down. At our point in our careers, we all have all these fights. We've been doing it forever. To be fair, your corner advice, there's usually not a lot you don't know, and it's just a matter of trying to do it yourself. But that could be an extra set of eyes that can help, reminding you, hey, he's not down right now, or he is, or you are not down right now. It's just small things, but I think that, that puts a little bit extra work into the corner, and then it should be no problem.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, it's just an interesting time, man. It'll be cool to kind of see that. And probably, like you were saying before, it'll probably just be a matter of time seeing how these fights play out to see how much of a difference is actually made ultimately. But just seems like such a good time for Champions Creed. Like it seems like there's, people doing great things out of that gym nowadays and whatnot. And just, yeah, it's great to see the Calgary scene now. I mean, this interview probably won't even be out by the time this goes down, but like that absolute MMA event that's going down in Calgary fairly soon. Like it seems like there's some Champions Creed representation on that as well. So just yeah, cool to see what's been happening with just the gym and everything and just how they've been able to do great things on the UFC level as you're doing, and then just a lot of the, more interesting regional shows as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are changing the way that martial arts is being thought of and executed here in Calgary for sure. We've got 2 locations now. I own the second location here, and it's already, I mean, we've been about a year and a half, but I mean, it's packed. We got lots of people. The Absolute Cards is a Champions Creed brand. We run that card because we have so many fighters. We need to give them a place to fight. So we actually had to start a fight card. It's giving the city and the other gyms and teams a place to compete as well too. We're just growing the scene. It's just what it is. We are doing so much so fast that the scene is moving with us. And yeah, MMA especially is just in Calgary right now. If you say MMA, you think Champions Creed because that we have the biggest team, we have the most gyms, we are running our own events, and we're the ones doing it at the highest level too in the UFC. So it all kind of comes full circle and goes hand in hand. But yeah, we're crushing it down here right now. Things are great, things are positive. It gives me a lot of energy to keep doing what I do and get out there and inspire our students and our young fighters and just keep doing my thing.
Yeah, and that's just the thing too, because it's like it creates this certain foundation for a lot of these fighters. Like, who's to say there's not like this new wave of not even just UFC fighters, but whatever represents like a big league, kind of like global opportunity for a lot of these fighters. So it'll be, cool to see what unfolds with that in like a generational kind of sense. I mean, I guess even at the end of the day, if the fighters don't go that route and maybe their motivation is more oriented to fitness, like just even like the core aspect of having that communal interaction, like that real strong sense of community that is fostered at really multiple gyms now, as you said.
Yeah, man, that's what makes what we do so great is that we really believe in it. It's life changing for a lot of people. I mean, think about my own life. Martial arts has completely changed my life for the better, and that's at one level. But there's lots of other levels. We create transformational confidence for people when they walk in here, and the transformational word is the important part there. It's not just confidence like getting a new shirt or a haircut. It's like we are really changing people and making them feel better, making them do better, and it compounds. It gives me more energy when I see it, and then I can go out at a higher level, and it just creates this cycle of confidence and positivity, and that's what makes us so hungry and so much strive to do what we do. And yeah, it's going great. And I love seeing more and more people stepping out of their comfort zone, getting into martial arts on the kids side, the adult side, if it's for fitness, if it's for self-defense, if it's just for fun and just to be around people. Yeah, it's a pretty great life right now.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I've seen that from recent interviews where you're talking about how, I guess, grateful you are that martial arts is your life in a comprehensive way. And that really does come across because I know, like, previously you were kind of like splitting time with some other jobs and stuff like that. But it seems like just based on probably even the magnitude of what you have to do in MMA as a UFC fighter, gym owner, etc., that this is like your life now.
It's what I wanted. It's what I've been working towards. I wanted it to be my life. It's like you find this thing you really love, and that's the first thought is, how do I do only this? I don't want to do anything else. And don't get me wrong, it's not easy, and it took a long time. But right now, I am only doing the things that I want to do, and it's yeah, it's pretty great.
No, it's a beautiful thing, man. And I feel like we probably covered quite a few bases, but in any event, I wanted to kind of give you the floor if maybe there was a final parting thought that you had wanted to add as we're, kind of wrapping things up here, man. I do appreciate you making the time to talk today.
Yeah, man, I'm just super motivated for this fight. It's going to be the biggest fight of my career. I'm going to have so much support there in person, but I also have so much support in the build up. I get motivation from my students, from the people that are here for, their first class and they really push through. And then I see them, a month later and they're getting in shape and they're more confident. Like that gives me motivation to keep doing what I'm doing, pushing myself, fighting at the highest level, having success because I know how much it impacts them and the gym. So I just have a ton of support right now from my family, from friends, from the gym. And yeah, I'm going to use that support and funnel it into a great performance. So I'm really excited to give everybody a real great night and a real great chance to celebrate and be happy they came to watch me.
Yeah, it's going to be a great night, man. UFC Edmonton is definitely one I'll be keeping my eyes on for November 2nd there. And this Cody Gibson fight definitely stands out among a card that is a big fire up for people who follow the Canadian MMA scene. Like, this is a matchup that I think a lot of people are understandably stoked for. And again, to reiterate, thank you for taking the time to appear on the MMA Canada platform today. And yeah, you have a good rest of your day, man. I'll be peeping the fight when it goes down.
Thanks, man. Appreciate the support. Have a great day.